Welcome, Greek U Nation, to episode number 437 of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Ayalon, CEO of Greek University. I'm a speaker and an author. Our fifth book just came out. It's called Perseverance and How to Be a Great Fraternity or Sorority Alumnus. So go and pick up that book on Amazon or Barnes & Noble today. We call these episodes the Fraternity Foodie Podcast because there is nothing like great food to bring together college students. Fun fact, my daughter is opening up acceptance letters right now, and she is going to be deciding which college she is going to be going to this week. It's been an exhilarating roller coaster ride, but the options that she has are so much greater than my own at that age. That is the most exciting thing that I can say, that both of my kids will have much greater opportunities in life than I've ever had. And I could not be prouder as a father. That is truly what has given me great joy in life. Speaking of being a proud dad, let's talk to our next guest. In the fall of 1994, Nathaniel Turner learned he would become a father. Given the tumult of his childhood, Nathaniel was terrified that he would be a chip off the wrong block. Determined not to sentence his child to the same adverse childhood experiences that Nate suffered, Nate did something novel. He studied backward design and how he might apply it to parenting. The backward design approach worked phenomenally for his son. In addition to raising a multilingual child who was accepted to 27 of America's best universities, receiving a fellowship to earn his Ph.D. from Carnegie Mellon in electrical and computer engineering, and a full ride to NYU's Stern School of Business, just to name a few highlights. Nate discovered that the tools, techniques, and strategies that he used to aid his son on his educational journey and life journey, those were both applicable for Nate's own life. Nowadays, Nate enjoys sharing what he knows about raising children and helping students get in and graduate from their dream schools with little to no debt. Equally important is that he gets to share with others how to design your life backwards so that you can live your life just as you have always imagined. Welcome to the show, Nate.
Well, thank you very much. I love the introduction. I'm
Yeah,
like, who's
man.
that
Listen,
guy?
that's a heck of an intro right there. If you need me to, do some introductions for you on stages across the country, I'm available.
Absolutely.
Just tuck me away in your suitcase and, take me around the world, man.
I got you. How about I just get you a ticket and you just fly with me? Yes.
That works too. So
Airplanes,
let's
the as
go
I
ahead.
said, the airplanes have enough problem without us sneaking people in
Oh my God,
luggage.
you are not kidding. You are not kidding. The airline industry has really taken a beating over the last 6 months.
Exactly.
So they got some work to do, no question about that. Now, let's talk a little bit about your childhood. And in the
Sure.
intro, we talked a little bit about adverse childhood experiences. In the
Mhm.
industry, it's known as ACEs. You
Mhm.
are a survivor of 8 of these adverse childhood experiences. How were you able to rise above all of these childhood trials and tribulations that you went through?
I think the first part of it is that when you're a kid going through stuff, you don't know that you're going through anything.
Mm.
You just assume that this is the norm. You don't realize that it's not normal until you get around kids who've not experienced those kinds of things. So that's part of it. The second part of it, I think, which is perhaps much more important, is that I had an opportunity to meet some people who thought that my life mattered enough to treat me as if I was their own child. They love, as I say, people decided to love me for no reason. Those people became what I now call my starting five and what I show other people how to do. But yeah, I had 5 people who decided that I could do more of my life despite what was going on in my life, and they're the people to help me put me on the right path to eventually go to college and do what I've done throughout my life.
Man, that is great. I love that starting five idea. That's just incredible. And you know what? You're absolutely right. I mean, the most motivated people on the planet, you take like a Michael Jordan as an example, they all need motivators in their life. I mean, they needed
Yeah.
the Phil Jackson to push them and to push the right button so that Mike can go out and score 50 points a night and just dominate on the court. And it's like that over and over again with some of the greats. So you really have to think about as a college student the people that are surrounding you, are they adding to your life or are they subtracting from your life?
Yeah, we give a test. It's called it's the starting five test. And so the test asks this: who are the 5 people you spend the most time with. Because you and I were talking about data earlier, but there's data to it. There's a guy named Dunbar. Last name is Dunbar, and you've probably heard of Dunbar's number.
Sure.
And so, and then of course there's the law of averages, and then Jim Rohn used to talk about you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, and that's so we think of it about that way. Who are the 5 people you spend the most time with, and how are those people helping you to either become an eagle or causing you to be a pigeon?
That's powerful right there. You ultimately decided to go to school at Butler University, which is a fantastic institution for your undergraduate experience. Tell our audience, why did you choose Butler?
This is going to be really short and sweet, because 2 schools said yes to me, Michael. That's it. And Butler happened to be one of those schools. I was denied by all of my other large state schools, IU, Purdue, where my friends were thinking about going. I met a gentleman from Butler named James Pritchett. At the time, affirmative action was still a thing, helping kids get to school. Mr. Pritchett came on behalf of Butler. They had some initiatives to get more students of color there. And he said, "Hey, you can come. My grades were not great, my test scores were not great, but hey, they were gonna make concessions for me to come there." And then I applied to Fisk because one of the people in my starting 5, the strategy he gave me, this backward design process, was for me. What I understood was that I should apply to Fisk. So I had 2 schools to say yes. Fisk lost his accounting accreditation. They called me and said, "We no longer have accreditation." I'm like, "I have no idea what that means, but that doesn't sound like a good thing." Butler still had theirs. My mother said, "Your uncle lives in Indianapolis. He can drive you home sometime on weekends." And without ever visiting the campus, on an late August date, my mother dropped me off on a Sunday at Butler, and that was it.
Wow, that's an incredible story. I mean, obviously it all worked out, right? Everything happens for a reason, I like to say, and it all clearly worked out. As a guy who lives in Nashville, I would have loved for you to have gone to Fisk, but I think not having the accreditation of the accounting department, that's a
Was
big
an
issue.
issue.
That's a big
That was an issue.
problem right there.
That was an issue.
That's an issue. That is definitely an issue. And I looked at your transcripts. I mean, you were a very involved student. I mean, you joined Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated, and I'm sure
Mhm.
you had many options in terms of which organizations you would join on campus. What made you want to join Omega Psi Phi?
So I was always sort of destined to become AQ.
Mhm.
The person I mentioned who went to Fisk, his name is Judge James Kimbrough. He's no longer with us in flesh. But Judge Kimbrough, had a conversation with him. His son was a good friend of mine, and one afternoon at his house, he was asking me what I was going to do with my life because he was curious about who it was his son was hanging out with. And I wanted to be a basketball player. He kind of looked at me and was like, "Yeah, I don't think so." And so I asked him, how he became a judge, and he told me that he had gone to Fisk and he also attended John Marshall Law School, and he was an Omega. And so he was the most influential person that I knew. And so I wanted to emulate him as much as possible, and that included joining his fraternity. And then, of course, I learned about the cardinal principles of the fraternity, and of course, I fell in love with that. But my initial reason for wanting to be it is because of Judge Kimbrough.
Yeah, it's all about relationships. I mean, that's really the bottom line. It's all about, wanting to hang out with somebody and be around somebody that you respected and you cared for. I mean, that's really what it is. I mean, nobody really joins for the big event or whatever. It's none of that. It's a relationship. And that is kind of the point. This is why I asked the question, because I want the undergraduates to understand that it's all about relationships. That is the key. Now, we talked a little bit about you designing this life template for your son, who is incredibly successful as well. And so I guess my question is, tell our audience, what is a life template and how does that work?
Okay, so the life template is pretty simple to explain, I hope. The life template is like a GPS. Michael, you said you're in Nashville
Yes.
and I'm in Indianapolis. And if you and I wanted to meet up somewhere, let's say we wanted to meet up in Buffalo,
Mhm.
and we were both driving, we might take a slightly different route, but we would be intending to get to the same destination. You might know better than I would. I would have to have a GPS to map out where I was going. And assuming that you did, that GPS would tell us all the stops to make and turns to make and which highways to get on. And that's essentially what the life template is. The life template question begins by asking parents or adults these days, if the world was perfect, were perfect, and you could do or be anything you wanted to do or be, what would you want to do or be? Essentially, what are your most audacious hopes and dreams? And once we know that, then we build a backward process like a GPS to get you there.
I love that. Well, I actually did my undergrad at the University of Buffalo, so I actually know how to get to Buffalo, but you're absolutely right. Most of the time, it's all
Right,
GPS for me too.
right, right. Right. No, nobody uses the map anymore.
No,
Yes.
we don't use maps. I remember a day we used to like print those out, and have like be sitting there behind the wheel with like 10 pages trying to, read these directions. All of that is history, of course. Now, as parents, both of us are dads. How do we raise dreamers who actually embrace the responsibility to change the world and make it a better place? I mean, I turn on the news and I see nothing but tragedy everywhere. How do we make sure that this next generation changes the world for the better?
So my grandmother had an interesting thing she would say all the time. You may have heard me say this before. My grandmother, she lived to be 103. So very interesting experience because I had a chance to spend time with someone who's who knew her grandparents who were slaves, all the way to actually see President Obama become president. So she died in 2011. And she would say to me, like there's nothing new under the sun. So, whatever you think you're doing has been done before. But she would also say to me this, trees and fruit. And she says, Nate, every tree is known by the fruit that it bears. So I think, to answer your question, that the only way parents can raise dreamers is if parents are dreamers themselves.
Mhm.
I think somewhere along the line from our childhood, because if you spend time with a small child, small children have the most incredible dreams. They'll tell you they're going to the moon and the moon is made of cheese, and like they're gonna take crackers and have crackers with the cheese that's in the moon. They'll tell you all kind of incredible stuff they dream. And then at some point we tell them to stop dreaming. We tell them to be realistic. And so we remove the dreamer from them. And I think that's the thing. The dreamer still lives inside us. We just got to find that dreamer and bring that dreamer out. So I think that's the most important things parents can do is to dream themselves.
Yeah, well, I am certainly trying to dream myself and try to model the way for my own kids and other college kids all around the country. That's to try to promote being a lifelong learner. I'm sitting here writing my dissertation at the moment, trying to get a
Really?
doctorate degree,
No.
and so I'm trying to, let people know that, hey, like it never stops. You never stop learning ever. I mean, that's really kind of the whole point.
Hey,
Uh,
I'm gonna say my son told me that, like when he left to go to Brazil, mentioned that earlier. He's in
yeah.
the car, I'm 16, and I'm in the car, and I've got tears in my eyes. And he's like, "What are you crying about?" And I was like, "Man, because you're getting ready to go." And he's like, "Yeah, but like, dude, you've told me the dream. This is part of the dream." And he says, "Well, what are your dreams?"
Mm,
I looked at him and I said, I don't have any. Like my dream was to get you here, to make sure your life was better than mine. That's all I dreamt about. And then he says to me, it's not too late.
yep.
You still have time. You can do more.
Oof.
And so, right. And so that was the challenge that he dropped the gauntlet. And that was in 2012. A 16-year-old told me that. And that's what I've been working to do ever since.
Man, I tell you what, this kid is teaching at 16. That's incredible. And you've had a lot of success. I mean, you did this huge TEDx talk. I mean, it's got, a ton of people watching it. It's called We Owe Generation Z an Apology Today. And I think this is fascinating. I love talking about different generations. And I'm kind of wondering, why is it that different generations feel this need to like attack other generations, that they're not as good? The reality is these are just different generations based on the life experiences they had, and no generation is any better than the other. I mean, I'm happy Gen Z is here. I tell them that all the time because they do want to make the world a better place, and God knows we've messed it up enough.
Right. Yeah, I think you said, so why do we do that? I think it's a little bit of groupthink. I
Yeah.
think we do what's always been done. So someone criticized you, so now you feel beholden to criticize the next group of people without thinking about, hey, whatever we're criticizing them about, again, trees and fruit, they are who we created them to be.
Yeah.
If you don't like their attention span, Well, ask yourself who created the devices that you now blame about the attention span. You blame the devices. I don't blame the devices. I blame the humans. I blame the humans that created them and bought them and passed them out and said, "Hey, here, I'm too busy right now. Play with your game. Hey, I'm too busy. Watch something on your iPad." Like, I don't blame them. I blame us. We created them, bought them, and gave it to them and encouraged them to use it. So now the consequences are that they are a way we don't like. Well, who's responsible for it? Like, that's the question. Can we go back to the origin and
Yeah.
not talk about the outcome?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's real hard to put, the horse back in the barn after it's already out.
It
That's
is.
really difficult to do, you know? That's like
It
putting
is.
toothpaste back in the toothpaste jar. You can't. I mean, it's already out.
You can't. But the question then is that should we be blaming them?
Yeah.
Like, so
No.
what else did we expect to happen?
Right.
Like, that we didn't do any research, we didn't have any science, we just gave devices. Like, I tell folks, like, it's interesting when I hear people complain, business owners complain about employees today.
Right.
They don't want to work, et cetera. I said, well, you think about what we did. This is a generation of kids that we had to set up play dates.
Yeah.
So we didn't ever ask them to figure out how to have relationships with one another. We said, we're gonna set up the relationship. We're gonna set up the time and the location. And so we gave them video games, and if they didn't like the way the game was going, they hit the reset button.
Yeah.
I said, so that's what they do now at work. Why are you mad? Again, this is something we set up. So
Yeah, we did it. We did it, and we
we
got to
did.
take responsibility for it. We made
Right.
the bed,
Yep.
so now we got to sleep in
Right.
it.
Right. We got to work with them. If we don't like it, we got to work with them to fix it and not just criticize
Yeah. I was thinking, I just came back from speaking at Campbell University in North Carolina. And, one of the things universities are struggling with is retention and also graduation rates. I mean, that's across the board is an issue. So,
them.
how can universities improve in those areas?
I think this is interesting, especially universities that are state universities or universities that are connected to a local community. I
Mm.
find it interesting that I have not met any university yet who said to me that we work with our local school district to make sure the school district curriculum matches the curriculum necessary to attend and succeed at our institution. So one of the things I think universities have to do a better job of is building relationships with the schools, with the high schools, the school districts, et cetera, where they draw a great number of their students from. It would be better, it would serve them all better if the curriculum matched what it was necessary to succeed at the school, so you wouldn't have so many students taking remedial courses and those kind of things. I think the other thing is, of course, that when we do remediation, we got to really be serious about making sure that we're just not adding debt to students, that students understand that this is really going to get them somewhere. Because if you went to a high school and thought you were a really good student and you had a 3.8 or 3.9 GPA and you thought you were ready for calculus because you had a calculus class in high school, but you didn't realize that you didn't have real calculus. You only got like 10% of calculus, and when you get to college, you can't succeed in the class. Well, that means the school and the university did a poor job of making sure that there was a match. The university admitted you, and they know by looking at your test score that you're probably not going to do well in this math class. There has to be something that we do, put some mechanisms in place so that students can be successful, not acquire an additional amount of debt or have to stay longer or do the kinds of things that discourage them from wanting to be there. And the last thing I would say is universities, as we move in the way we work, changes. And we become a more math and science dominated society. We have to do a better job of making sure that when students earn a degree, it's a degree that's set up for the future work, not for yesterday's workforce.
Yeah, I like that last piece a lot. I agree with you that the universities need to be talking to the elementary schools, junior high schools about the curriculum and make sure that that matches and the students are getting what they need. But also, the university
Mhm.
should have those partnerships with corporations that are hiring the students on the other side to make sure that the curriculum at the universities also match the needs of the
Yeah,
workforce. And that is
yeah,
changing all the time. Think about
time. Yeah.
artificial intelligence and things like that.
But when you see every 4 years we take the PISA exam and we get compared to other program for international scholastic achievement, in case folks didn't know. Um, we see every year that the United States essentially falls further and further behind in reading, math, and science.
Mm.
And so those things we know are always going to be math and science as we move forward, are always going to, the better you are at that, the more opportunities you're going to have. And so again, the point would be from the very beginning, as I think about the life template, we have to be doing stuff so we can make sure children can do math, start understanding science, can read as soon as possible, rather than waiting to ask, can you read at a third grade level as a third grader? If we can get 2-year-olds to start to read, 2-year-olds to start to do math, we'd be better served, and so too with universities in the long run.
Yeah, 100%. I think about that a lot too with my son. My son is a data science major. And
Okay.
so, math is really like how his brain operates, but he's kind of a unicorn. I mean, like you just don't find guys like him that can do those kinds of, advanced math, advanced calculus while they're still in high school and also have really good communication skills. That,
Mhm.
that pairing is just really, really unusual. And then when I look at like when we went to the university, for like orientation and things like that. They dismissed all the kids based on their major. And I'm
Yeah.
telling you, like the number of like, computer science and data science people was like tiny. And I'm like, this is a huge
Yeah.
field. Like,
That's right.
why am I seeing this? This is wrong. Something's wrong here. Something's busted.
Well, you did something and your son did something in the beginning so that he would be better in those things you mentioned in math and science
Mhm.
and in his community. Yet you did something. And that's sort of the point of the life template. If I don't know what school your child decides to go to, but like with us, my ideal school was, hey, what if I could get a child in to meet the academic qualifications for Harvard? I can't guarantee they're going to get in Harvard. Harvard takes 3% of students,
Right.
but Harvard tells me every year what the profile student looks like. So what if I started building my child's life around the profile,
Mm.
right? Why? And so, any parent could do that. If I started thinking about that, well, if I'm building my child's life around a profile of an institution like a Harvard or Stanford, well,
Mm.
you're going to have to be able to be good in math and science because
Yep.
that's required. You might choose to major in anything else you want to major in, but in order to get in those schools, you're going to still have to do well in math and science.
Yeah, well, from your lips to God's ears, today is happens to be Ivy Day, and yes, Harvard is one of the schools that my daughter is waiting on today, and
Ah,
that's
well,
three
congrats.
percent. That's three
It's
percent of the
3%.
population that applies. So, I mean, this is like, just such a small fraction of the people who are applying to get in, and so, fingers are crossed. We'll see what happens. I also wanted to talk to you too about those fitness watches, and we were talking a little bit about the phones and the technology there that have created some, how should we say, adverse problems for our kids. How can fitness watches actually help our kids?
So everyone who has a fitness watch probably notices that the fitness watch can track stress. It'll tell you, my watch will say to me, I have a Samsung watch, so it's not an endorsement for Samsung. But if I don't work out, it'll ask me, hey, is today a day you're going to get some exercise? I'm like, how dare you? Like I worked out 6 days in a row. You mean I don't get a day off? Yeah, is today a day you're going to do something? So the very first time I used a fitness watch was with my in terms of education was with my son. I thought he had test anxiety. And I asked him to go to the center to get tested, and he didn't want to go get tested. So I said some stuff to him. I won't say on the show, but I then mailed him a fitness watch. And what I wanted him to do was to wear the watch because as a former athlete, I would say to him, as most athletes know, that you hear that practice should be harder than the game. And what I found was that most students, when they study, they don't amp up the anxiety for studying the way that the anxiety is amped up for tests. And so then it's essentially two different people taking the test. You're studying and you're all calm, and then you get in the classroom to take the test, and you're full of adrenaline and you're nervous. Well, your outcomes are not going to be the same as they were when you're studying. So I said, hey, we have to figure out what your stress levels are. And so when he wore it, he got a chance to see it for himself. That when he studied, his stress levels were really low. When he went in there to take that test, his stress levels were really high. And then based on that, we could configure what to do moving forward so that studying and test taking would all be at the same levels.
I love it. I love it. One other thing I wanted to talk to you about is diet and nutrition because that seems to be a huge issue for today's college students. I mean, back in the day, in let's call it fraternity and sorority life, people would sit down as brothers and they would have meals together at the house, and that was like a big focus. But now, like if I go by the fraternity house now, everybody's in a rush. They have a very low budget for food. So, they're just grabbing fast food or granola bar out the door so that way they can rush to get to class and sleep as much as they can, which they're not getting enough sleep. What tips can you share in terms of diet and nutrition for today's college students?
Well, one, I mean, what you consume, that old saying, you are what you eat, that is absolutely true. There are foods that help you think. There are foods that help you process information better, and then there are foods that do the exact opposite. So that's part of it. I would ask, do you want your education experience to be more difficult, or do you want it to be slightly easier? Because what you eat will have some effect on that. And I would also say, I mean, I don't know how much young people think about the future, but if you could get them to think about the future by simply taking them around some people who they consider to be old, I think you could ask them, which of these older people do you want to look like when you're their age? And by and large, my guess is that the people that they're most going to be interested in looking like are the people who do the better job of taking care of themselves. And so maybe that becomes impetus to take care of yourself. Then the last thing I would say is in terms of the things we eat, I think when we say we're all so rushed, it also feels oftentimes like it's just a matter of priority. And so if I had a car and you have a car and it takes premium gas, you know what we put in the premium car? We put premium gas in. We don't say I'm so rushed at the gas tank, I don't have time to put in premium gas. We put in premium gas. So we see ourselves as premium, like a lion who only eats, right, antelope and zebras. A lion doesn't eat pigeons and cockroaches unless you watch The Lion King. The lion doesn't eat that stuff. Then we would understand we're premium and we should eat premium foods.
I love that. We are premium. You're absolutely right. I love it. I love it. I love it. All right. So, speaking of food, I mean, we love
Mhm.
good food here at the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. And I do get up to Indianapolis quite a bit. There's a lot of fraternity and sorority headquarters that are located in
Yes, they
Indianapolis. We have
are.
lots of
Mhm.
conferences that go on there. So, are there any great food options in Indianapolis that you like to visit?
So I'm a vegan,
Yes.
and Indianapolis is not really vegan friendly.
Mm.
But there are some nice Thai restaurants here. There's some couple places in Carmel. So the next time you're in town, I'm going to hold you to reaching out to me, and I'd love to treat you to a meal. But yeah, there's a couple places in Carmel that are nice. Otherwise, I mean, they're some of the chain restaurants. There's a Yard House that I can go to sometimes and get a couple different vegan options. But for the most part, Indianapolis is it's not really vegan friendly.
It's not vegan friendly. I just came
It's
back
not
from
friendly.
California. That state is vegan
That's
friendly.
very free. Yes,
I
it is.
mean, it was unbelievable. They had like vegan pizza. They had
Hmm.
like there were like these chain stores. There were just like stores like all in the same complex, and there were like maybe four or five vegan like restaurants, markets, and it was like all right next door to each other. And I'm like, how do these restaurants stay in business? There's like five vegan places all like
Yeah.
next door to each other in a strip mall. And I'm like, what?
Yes.
I'm like, how does
Yes.
this
Yes.
happen? You know?
Yes.
So you
Yes.
got to pick the right place. But I do like Thai food, so I will definitely take you up on that the next time
All
I'm in
right.
the area. And Carmel is just a wonderful place to raise a family. I mean, that is just a wonderful, wonderful city. If I wasn't living in Franklin, Tennessee, just outside of Nashville, I'd be living in Carmel because that is just a very family friendly area. I love those like walkways that you have all over
Mhm.
town. And you're just like walking through people's backyards. I mean, it's awesome. It's awesome. I love
Yes.
that. And everybody
Yes.
goes out. Like you got to be seen on those walkways.
You're talking about the Mona, and everybody walks on the
Yes.
Mona. I
Yes.
tease everyone. I say that Carmel for many people is Disney World. Like this is the happiest place on earth for folks.
It is, it is such a gem. What a great city, man. I would love to live there. If I wasn't living in Franklin, I would live there.
Okay. All
That's a
right.
good place. That is a good place. All right. So if our student listeners, if they want to bring you in as a speaker on their college campus, where should they go to connect with you?
Now, my website is pretty simple. It's nathanielaturner.com, NATHANIELATURNER.com. And there's a section that says speaking, and you can just click the button and make a request.
NathanielATurner.com. Go and hit up that website and contact Nate. Bring him to your campus because I got to tell you, man, he knows what he's talking about and he can absolutely connect with Gen Z and do some amazing things, just like he did for his own son. So I am just in awe. I think this has been great. Thank you so much for sharing all this great information with us today, Nate.
And my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Of course.
I'll be waiting on you to come in town.
You're gonna hold me to it, man. I know
I'm
you
gonna
will.
hold you to it, man. Come
That's
on.
cool. That's totally
All
fine.
right.
I end up in Indianapolis a lot. So absolutely. You just missed me. I was just there in February. I'm there every February. So for sure, we are going to make that happen one point or another.
I'm liable to be in your neighborhood because I'm supposed to be speaking to some students at Tennessee State.
Oh,
So
cool. That'd be cool. All
yeah.
right. So let me know when, and we can hit up yeah, there's definitely some Thai restaurants.
There's some vegan restaurants
There's some
there
vegan
too.
restaurants too. Yeah. In
Yeah.
downtown Nashville, there's some. So we'll find
Yep.
something good, I promise. All right, cool,
Sounds
man.
good. All
So
right.
to our audience, if you enjoyed this conversation with Nate, I want you to like it. I want you to share it with other college students, and we'll see you on another episode of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you next time.